Hello and welcome. I am Exelite, and this is my podcast. Today, I have Rob with me. Hello, Rob.
Hi guys, hope you're all well.
Today's topic is something we've sort of touched on before, but never gone at it from this angle. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about sleep paralysis and demons. We're going to talk about the history of sleep paralysis and what other countries and what's the word I'm looking for, Rob? Cultures
Yes.
believe about this phenomenon, which has been going on for thousands of years. So I think today's going to be fun. I mean, in a strange way. Before I get started, I'm going to say that if you feel like you would like to support my work, you can become a member of Patreon, and that would be much appreciated. We're going to use that money for merchandise, to have giveaways, and for you guys to buy it if you want. And is there anything I need to start off with saying?
No, just I think that's everything really. You said that we're going to be looking at it slightly different. You didn't mention in your introduction that we are looking at night terrors as well as sleep paralysis. Some people like to put the two in two different categories.
Yes. Well, yes. And my personal opinion on the subject is that it's the same. It's night terrors. Yeah. It's not so much sleep paralysis. And strangely enough, throughout centuries and centuries, the cultures who have had these issues, which is every culture around the world, they believe you can't become paralyzed, but they don't think that this is a dream. So we're going to come at it from that angle. And I'm going to start by saying that scientists believe that 1 in 5 people will at some point in their life experience, quote unquote, sleep paralysis. Do you think that's about right, Rob? Do you know other people who have experienced that?
I do know other people, yes. And I think
1 out of 5, you think?
I think it could be more than that, to be quite honest with you.
Really?
For some of the research that I've done today and what I've listened to over the last few days, it says that nearly everybody will have an incident or an attack at least once during their lifetime.
Really?
So that is, I tend to think it is more than that.
So do you think people don't talk about it?
I think they would like to talk about it, but if you're struggling and you're having this problem, what do you do? Who do you go and speak to? Do you go and speak to your doctor? Do you go and, because your doctor's is not gonna, which we'll get to later on in the podcast, but the majority of professionals won't accept the fact that it could be paranormal or supernatural. They're going to completely think that you've got some kind of, obviously, sleep paralysis, or they're going to put you on some kind of medication to help you sleep. Now, if you're on some kind of medication to help you sleep, it's probably the worst thing that you can be taking if night terrors are real.
Yes. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I did go to my doctor. My first night terror happened when I was 24. And I was going through a bad time in life and had some depression. And I did go to my doctor and say, hey, listen, I'm having these, I can't call it a nightmare because I'm awake and having this experience, and told him what happened to me. And he said, You know, it's probably because you're going through a rough time. It's probably normal, and did give me a sleeping medicine, which did uh, the exact opposite of what he thought it would do. I just kept having them every night then, so I finally stopped taking it.
Yeah. So it didn't
Um,
help you at all, did it?
no, it didn't. And I want to say right off the bat that I'm not feeling that great, you guys. So please excuse me if I'm a little, not here today. Uh, but I also want to say that I have had many, many episodes of this happening. And if you have listened to my video about why we stopped doing paranormal videos for a while, it has, it is exactly this reason. So I'm going to have moderator Maya put the link up to my two that I have on my channel, two stories about this. In particular, my last one, which is called The Real Reason Why We Stopped Doing Paranormal Podcasts. So I am not going to be going over that with you guys again. I'm going to just let you, if you're interested, go ahead and watch those videos. I don't feel that it's in my best interest to talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys don't mind that. I'm going to come at it from historical and a lot less to do with my own experiences. And I hope that's okay. So, where do you want to start? Can we talk about how this is thought to be the origins of the belief in the paranormal?
Well, yeah. I mean, like I was saying before, I mean, the first proper recorded case, which was basically the first time it was wrote down, and you could go back to the beginnings of the Bible, but we're going to just talk about this for the time being. So the first proper recorded case was wrote down in the Chinese Book of Dreams, which was 3,000 years BC.
Mm-hmm.
So that is way before Jesus, and it's way before, the New Testament and any of the Gospels. So sometimes it comes as an old hag, or my ex-wife. I hope she's not bloody listening.
I do too.
or a shadow figure, or a woman, a male or a female, a ghost or a spirit, and sometimes even a demon. Sometimes there may be more than one. Now, the reason I wanted to get that out of the way is because I believe when you're looking at shadow figures, ghosts, spirits, demons, there's so much, like we talked about this last couple of days, there's so much crossover between other parts of the paranormal. So I think maybe this is the beginnings of paranormal and supernatural.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be. All beliefs from succubus, incubus, ghosts, entities, all paranormal beliefs are said to stem from this experience. They obviously had to explain it some way. And I think that's very interesting that throughout at least 3,000 years, right? At
Yes.
least. I mean, it's longer than that. People have believed in spirits and ghosts much longer than that. But everybody has the same dream, it's the same experience. So 3,000 years ago, people were having the same experience that I have in 2018. They're having the same. Some people see the figure. Some people don't see the figure. I don't see the figure. I feel it. I feel its weight. I feel it get onto the bed. I know it's behind me. I know that if I turn around and look at it, that it would be the worst possible thing for me to do. It's horrifying. The true definition of horror is when this happens to you. I feel the weight of it on my chest. I feel it try and suffocate me. 3,000 years ago, they felt the same thing.
Yeah.
So I am really interested in doing this topic because it's, if we were having dreams, like we talked about this morning, Rob, if we were having dreams, you have dreams based on your life experiences. Like they say, you've never had a dream that has a face in it that you've never seen at some point. Your brain doesn't make up faces. You've seen that face somewhere. So how would it be possible that 3,000 years ago, people are having this experience with their life experience, and people in 2018 are having the same experience with their life experience? They're not even close to the same. Yet they all have, most all have the basic connection of feeling the presence, of feeling somebody's on top of you. And then there's some people who have different things, like seeing face or the face changing. We'll talk about producer Jeremy's story later about he had one like that. And across the board, it's considered evil. Sorry, you guys, my dog is in the background whining because she misses Joshua, which is a hint to my husband if he wants to bring Joshua back. So nobody goes, yeah, this thing came and I was awake and saw it, and it was like Santa was there. Nobody has that experience with this. It's always traumatic. It's always horrifying. And it actually, if you have these consistently, it actually changes the way your brain looks on an MRI or a CAT scan. And it starts to look like somebody who's going through PTSD.
Chaser.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
When you're talking about your experience and
yes.
talking about people, some people have slightly different experiences. Like sometimes they can actually see a person. Sometimes they can't see a person. From the research that I've done today, there are supposed to be stages of night terrors. And the first stage, and it's like when you're talking about people getting possessed, there are different stages of possession. There's about 3 or 4 different stages.
Right.
As far as night terrors are concerned, the first stage is that you become aware that there is something, a presence in your room, in your house, and that's it. For the second stage is you will see the spirit, the ghost, the old hag, and there will be physical contact, i.e., like you said, they'll crawl up on your chest so you can't breathe, try and strangle you. And for most people, that is as far as it will go, even though that's terrifying in itself. The next stage then is something we're going to talk about later on, is that people go to bed at night and they don't wake up in the morning.
Right.
They die from a heart attack or from whatever they can try and pin it down to and as a cause of death. But basically, they go to bed at night a healthy person and they don't wake up in the morning. So maybe your experience, you think you got to the second stage, don't you? You believe, you got to the second stage.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But the thing is that I never went to well, I guess I had experiences with paranormal before I had these encounters, this experiences. So I guess that could have been a stage 1.
It's just being aware and just knowing that something's wrong. You know, you're not necessarily seeing anything, but just being scared and for no reason. Goosebumps,
Mm-hmm.
hairs on your back of your neck standing up. Just
Right.
wondering what there's that. Sounds really hard to put into words, but that feeling that people get when they're scared and they don't know why they're scared. Sometimes when you walk into a room in a strange house, you get that feeling, don't you? They're on the back of your neck. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. There's something. Sometimes when you meet people, you get that funny feeling, don't you?
Yeah.
That person. So that's sort of stage 1. But I thought that was quite interesting because that stage 1, it could be anything. Like you just said,
Yeah.
you just said now, it could be anything. It could be a shadow figure, could be a ghost, it could be a spirit, it could be a demon. How do we know that the demon isn't a shadow figure that you can't see? Excuse me. How do we know that shadow figures and demons and ghosts and spirits aren't all the same thing? We don't know, do we?
No, we don't. Yeah. Well, and that's why these cultures have the belief that it is a demon. They believe that even if they see the shadow figure or a black figure or whatever they see, that they don't go, oh, that's a shadow figure, that's fine. You know what I mean? They just go, it's a demon.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably because of the feeling is dark. It's malevolent, and I've seen shadow figures, and I don't get that feeling. But this is something that is evil. It's an evil, by definition, evil presence.
Yeah. I mean, can I quickly talk about my experience that I had? Now, I don't know
Yes,
if it
of
is
course.
actually a night terror as such or a paranormal experience that I had when I was in hospital.
Okay.
We talked about this the other day. I think you were the first person I've actually told for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was in hospital I had pneumonia and pleurisy, I think I had. And they thought that I had bird flu or swine flu or some kind of bleeding animal flu. So I had to
Okay.
be.
Some animal.
Thanks for the support. I could have died. I died in hospital and you're laughing. But anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I was just laughing at the way you said it.
Okay. So anyway, I ended up after having to be quarantined. And while I was being quarantined, I was getting more and more poorly. And I ended up in intensive care. And I was sort of in and out of consciousness. And I will swear on a stack of Bibles that even though a lot of people might say, well, it was the fact that you were poorly or the fact that you were given medication and this, that, and the other, there was something in my room, like a shadow figure coming into my room and there in the corner of the room. It didn't climb on top of me. It didn't none of that. But we would. It's hospitals now. It caused me to be afraid of. I don't like hospitals at night. I know you like hospitals at night.
Yes, I do.
I just can't stand them. I think they're just weird and horrible places. But that was my sort of like I said, I don't know if it's classed as a shadow figure. Well, I class it as a shadow figure. I don't know if it's a night terror or whether it could have been a night terror. But obviously, I was under observation all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably, if something, even if it was invisible to the rest of the world, something was to climb up onto my chest. And I mean, I was having enough problems breathing anyway because of the pneumonia. So they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, knowing my luck.
Right, right. Yeah, you're right. Well, okay, so I was telling you too that the first, well, and I think only experience with a whatever this is that my dad had, he was in the hospital and he had just had major surgery on his lung. And the same would have been true for him if he had died from being suffocated. They would have thought it had to do with his surgery. That's the reason they would have been given. So that's interesting. And I think that, and many people think that these come to you when you're at a weak point in time, when there's that crack in the door that's open. And which is one of the reasons why I'm not going to really go into much to my experiences, because I've had that door opened and I don't like it. So I wonder how that happens when our defenses are down or we are depressed or sick or whatever. This comes then as if it knows, and I'm going to reiterate this, and has for centuries in the exact same manner. For me, the fact that it's the same manner for centuries, for me, that says this is not chemicals in your brain changing and you're paralyzed because you're asleep. And I get the paralyzed sleep thing. I get that. And maybe that is the chemical that's being released in your brain at that time. I don't know. But the fact that thousands, millions of people experience this in the exact same way with a completely different life experiences, completely different cultures, tiny villages who've never seen anybody but them have the exact same experience as we do. That to me says this is not a malfunction of our brains. We wouldn't all have the same experience. And if we do, what did we experience before we were born? That is where our brain goes.
Can I just run through the different names of what different cultures and different people from different countries have called this?
No.
You don't want me to do that?
No, Rob, I'm teasing you. Yes.
Right, okay. It's going to be
I'm
one of them
sorry.
nights.
It is. It has to be.
Okay. In Europe, in places like around Europe, it was known as the Myra.
Mara.
I can never say that word properly. Now, they believe that she would come after some kind of tragedy and kill one person or two people, but it would be like a cluster, maybe in a small village, and they would breathe. Right, I'll try again. They will kill clusters of people. In Newfoundland, it's known as the hag or the old hag. In Japan, it is known as, or she is known as, Kenshi Bari. Kenshi Bari, yes.
It's yeah. Yeah. Kanishibari.
Kanishibari.
Yes,
And
Kanishibari.
in Zanzibar, which is an island just off East Africa, it's known as a Papa Bawa.
Papa Bawa.
Papa Bawa. And in Vietnam, now this name doesn't make sense to me because it's spelled Doubts Cho. But the name of it changed to it became known as the Nocturnal Death.
Yes.
Night
Yes.
Death.
Yes, that's right. They changed it to nocturnal to night death. Nocturnal death.
And the Myra one, which is where the word nightmare comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep naming your names. Well, I just want to say that the Mara originated in the pagan culture in Europe.
Yeah.
And they called this demon shape-shifting presence, entity that shows up while you're paralyzed, the Mara. And then they started calling it the Night Mara because it only happens at night, which is how we got the current version, which is what we call the Nightmare. And the pagan version literally meant the crusher that comes in the night.
Yeah.
And, it because they're having the experience of it being on top of them and crushing them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Keep interrupting each other. I just feel that we've got to, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you have some belief. I presume you have some belief in the paranormal or the supernatural, because I doubt you would want to listen to our podcast if you didn't have some kind of idea that things aren't always so easy to explain. Now, myself and Tracy have both had paranormal experiences, and we know, I think you'll vouch for me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Tracy, but we know that it's real. We know that you have to be careful. We had an incident which Tracy was talking about earlier, which I'm not going to go into too much, and sometimes it can be bloody scary, and you need to be aware of that. I can't understand why, if you were having these incidents and you were having these things every night, how in some cases there's marks. They leave physical evidence behind. They leave marks on the body, bruises. You go to your GP, your doctor or your GP in the United Kingdom and say, this is what's happening. How come they just completely jump to, like, it's a default setting that it's all in your head? When you could have evidence. And from what we watch today, some of these attacks are of a sexual nature. Now, people were interviewed, especially being a man. Some of the attacks were quite personal and weren't very nice. For a man to go on camera and be filmed and say that basically he was raped by this entity, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't put yourself. The people looked okay, didn't they? They didn't look like nutters.
Right.
They looked normal people who were working, and they weren't on drugs. They were okay. And for them to go on camera and be filmed in a documentary saying that they were raped by this invisible entity, there must be some kind of truth behind them and truth behind what they were saying because of the ridicule that they will get off their friends and their family.
Right.
I mean, there was one gentleman, wasn't there, the Scottish guy, who was saying that a few years before he moved into this bedroom, his younger brother was sleeping in the bedroom. His younger brother had the same kind of experiences, and they'd never talked about it. Only at this point now, where he said, "Look, I'm having these problems. Did you ever have any problems with while you were sleeping in the bedroom?" And he got quite upset, didn't he? And he said, "Yes, I have had some things happen to me, but I don't want to talk about it."
Right.
So do you think that we should? We're going to get on to. I'd like to talk, if it's okay with you, about the Dr. David Hufford.
Sure.
Who's an American doctor he's a professor of please get my mouth right. Humanities and behavioral science at Penn State University. I have no idea where Penn State University is. Do you know where it is, Tracy?
I'm assuming Pennsylvania. Is that right? Is that right, Jeremy?
No, I don't know. I don't heard of Penn State Prison.
No, I'm assuming it's Pennsylvania, right? Sports fans, you guys know your colleges. You want to tell me where Penn State is?
I just wondered. Just putting it out there to the World Wide Web. Anyway, Dr. Hufford, unlike some of the other professionals, doctors, scientists, he had his own experience of night terrors. And instead of putting it down to sleep paralysis, he basically went on this journey to find out why, as far back as 3,000 years ago, or sort of 5,000 years ago, people, cultures from different religions, why they all report the same experience. And he was basically saying to people that when the scientists or the doctors fob the people off, that we shouldn't just think, well, they're the professionals. We basically have got to just toe the line. Should be maybe it's our fault as much as anyone's. People just don't want to be bothered, do they? They just don't. If the doctor tells you it's this, how many people challenge what the doctors say, especially about something like this? And he basically says he has basically stated that we need to stop believing and being fobbed off by professionals, and we need to be challenging and saying, "I believe this has happened to me, and I want to know why." Because he went all over the world, didn't he?
Yes. To many different cultures.
Yeah.
Many different places in the world to see what they were experiencing.
I mean, the place in Africa that he went, from what I could gather, these people didn't have televisions. They didn't have any kind of social media.
No.
But they were saying exactly the same stories as everybody else in the US, in the UK, in Europe.
Right.
How can that be? How can that be?
That's what's confusing. And where he was Zanzibar. And in Zanzibar, they had okay, so let me explain Zanzibar for a minute. Zanzibar is a small island off the coast of Tanzania. And the way it became prominent in the area was that it was an international slave port. So it was where, obviously, internationally, people would go and pick up slaves to take back to their countries. It was originally ruled by the Portuguese, and then it was became ruled by, and this is what they said in the documentary, if this is offensive and not the way it should be said, I'm sorry about that. But it said then it became ruled by Arabs, and then the British, and then they had a bloody, violent revolt, a revolution in 1964. And that is when Zanzibar became a part of the United Republic of Tanzania. And so it's mostly Muslim now, but it does still have a decent amount of the culture that is witchcraft and African tribal religions. So it's kind of a mixed bag there, and it's not modernized. It's like a third world country.
Yeah.
And in 1970, the people of Zanzibar had this experience going from village to village of the Papa Bawa attacking people at night. It was so prevalent that people began sleeping out in the streets together for safety, thinking that they wouldn't be attacked if they were together and they were safe. That happened 3 times to this island, 3 times. So it happened in 1970, which was just 6 years after they had a violent, bloody revolt that killed thousands of people. And then it happened again in 1995 and again in 2000. So some people blame these attacks on the fact of the history of this island, the fact that it was a slave trading island and the violence that came simply with that. Then it was also very violent when they had their revolution. This island has seen violence that we can't imagine. Other people blame the fact that there's black magic practice there and say that the black magic is what brought these Papa Bawas. Now, understand, it's not just the tribal people that are experiencing this. It's also the Muslim population experiences this. It doesn't pick and choose. It doesn't matter the culture you're in or your religion. You're going to experience this. So they have these waves where like thousands of people in 1970, 1995, and 2000 were all having this same experience at the same time, and then it went out like a wave. Came in like a wave, went out like a wave. Very distinct. And if it was a mass hysteria where, your neighbor had it and then they told somebody and then they had it and then you were like, oh my God, am I going to have it? And then you think you have it. I don't think that it would like just suddenly stop one day. Like, boom, we're done having this mass hysteria. We're going to move on.
Yeah.
Something came into the village and they said, and the guy in the documentary we watched said that when he was there, he'd been awake for 3 days traveling, and he was afraid to go to sleep because he had this experience, this entity, this night terror, and he'd been awake for 3 days, and he was so scared being in Zanzibar that he said the feeling was so dark that he still didn't go to sleep, so that he didn't have this attack him while he was there. And I just think it's very interesting that it's probably the Muslims who blame the black magic, or the people who don't practice either on that island, if there are any, that blame the black magic, but there's also the violence of this island. And does that have something to do with this particular island? Is it
Yeah.
possible that that happens? And maybe because people are afraid, maybe they're at a low point and it can take advantage of that. I don't know.
Mm. Do you remember when we did our podcast on shadow figures? And I'm
Yes.
sure I'm getting this the right way round. And it's just funny that you said that they were Muslims, because some of them had even gone to the point of taking a page from the Quran and folding it up into a little pouch, hadn't they, to protect them?
Yes. Yes.
And the reason I'm bringing that up, when we did our shadow figure podcast, wasn't one of the ways to stop being attacked by the shadow figures was saying the Lord's Prayer, or saying
Mm-hmm.
a prayer to God or to Jesus.
Right.
It would help you. It would help scare the shadow figure, entity, ghost, spirit, whatever it is, demon, away. So
Right.
I'm wondering if that would help people. If you look at, this is the same in the UK. People will say that they're Christian and say that they believe in God, but maybe it's the fact that it's easy to say it, but that's the crack that he needs to get in. There's so many people now who don't really, really, truly believe in God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's
I think
just
if you're born
me.
into a Christian family, I'm sorry. I think if you're born into a Christian family in a Christian country, that you just self identify, it's easy to just self identify as a Christian because that's how you were raised. You were probably taken to church. It doesn't really mean that you have a deep belief in that. I think you self-identify that as like if you're Italian, like here you're a fifth, sixth, seventh generation Italian in this country, you would still say I'm Italian, but you don't really
Yeah.
know how to speak Italian. You don't still cook with the old, recipes from home, that kind of thing. I think it's just a self-identifying term for some people.
Mm. Maybe the fact that, and I use your terminology, the fact that it's looking at you when you're at a low ebb and you're not feeling well, or you're very, very anxious or stressed, or you've got some kind of mental illness, that's its way in. That's
Yes.
the hook that it needs. And then if you have no faith, if you have no belief, then it's got you. But if you do have if you do have faith in whatever you want to have faith in, whether it's the Quran or being a Christian or being a Catholic, then it's it will find it more difficult, because I know when I'm, as a Catholic, I know when I'm ever scared or stressed or anything, I will I will try and go to church more. I will pray more. I pray every day anyway, but maybe that's the little bit that it needs to be able to manipulate people. And once they're scared, then you know what? I think what if what Jeremy said yesterday about whether it is something, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, so I apologise, Jeremy. That even if it is something to do with chemicals being released in the brain, or it is a spiritual thing, or it is a night terror, whether it's a demon, is the demon causing these chemicals to be released in your brain? Is the old hag causing these chemicals to be released in your brain? You know, is it, does it go hand in hand, or is it completely, the chemical thing is completely obsolete? It's just a way of scientists saying, this is what we're gonna describe it as this, and we're gonna catalogue it as this. So there you go, that's it. You know, here's some tablets, go home and stop bothering me.
Right. Well, okay, so I'm going to just I'm gonna disagree with you for a second. I don't think that your level of religious belief has any bearing on this.
Okay.
I have had these experiences, and I feel that I have a deep level of religious belief. And I've had the worst of these experiences. The worst, with the exception of being assaulted, like like we were talking about. And we're not going to really get into.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll say that they were sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
With the exception of that, I've had the worst, terrifying experience with this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What?
I just so I don't think that. Sorry, this makes me emotional.
You okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think that is a bearing on it.
All right. Yeah. I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. Well, can I move on to something different?
Yeah.
This is something I read today. I found it. I found these 2 points just by chance, and sit up. Okay, got to hear me out. Hear me out here, because this is a bit, especially the second one, can be a little bit long-winded. Now, I didn't know this. I don't know. You mentioned it before, and I thought you'd stole me thunder, but I don't think you did. Right. There's also been. I'm going to read this. Although it's from my notes from today. Also, there have been links between night terrors and people suffering from PTSD. Because as a person who suffers from PTSD from my time in the military, majority of people awakened by really vivid hallucinations or flashbacks. Now, I really, really can get that as someone suffers from PTSD, because I have really, really bad I have really, really bad flashbacks, nightmares, and I am never frozen when I wake up and I can't move, but I have had hallucinations, and I can see why people who do suffer from PTSD could be more open to night terrors and or sleep paralysis, whichever one you want to call it. What do you think about that?
Oh, heavens, yes. And like I mentioned earlier, they said that people who suffer from these actually have, yes, thank you, Mad Meerkat. I am okay. Thank you. Um, that their brain actually, I'll address that question. It makes me very emotional, because my experience with this used to be just something I could talk about and not think twice about. But my last experience with this was so horrific. I talked to Rob about 15 minutes after it happened, and I was a mess. And you guys could go listen to my story about it. It was a 24-hour ordeal with me. And so
I think people probably better off just listening to your story.
Yeah. So it's just that it's if there's a quote. There was a quote in this documentary that we said that we watched, and it says, "For those who believe no explanation is necessary. For
Yeah,
those who don't know, for those who don't, no explanation is possible." And that's exactly it. That you can't explain the type of fear that it is. And Diabolical Witness commented that his night terrors and sleep paralysis experiences were the most terrifying things that he's ever been through. And I don't think you're going to find a person on this planet who won't tell you that they're terrifying. And mine just like were amped up by 100% the last time I had one. So uh, that's why it's fascinating to me that for thousands of years people have been having sorry, the same experience
yeah,
that I have had in different cultures and languages and religions. Um, that's why it's fascinating to me and that's why I can't believe that it's um, it's just a state that your mind goes into when you're in this paralyzed state between awake and asleep, and it's totally normal. Believe me when I tell you that it is not normal, and you're not asleep. Anyway, about the PTSD, people who
yeah,
have these on a regular basis, their brain scans show that it does cause them to have the same changes in their brain that PTSD causes. So, absolutely, do I think that somebody who has PTSD is at even more open to this experience. Their brain has already been set to the setting that allows that to come in freely.
yeah.
So
And
absolutely.
you're more open as well to if you're having hallucinations anyway about your to do with your PTSD and
Mm-hmm.
your flashbacks as well, then you're like you've just said, your mind is already tuned in, type of thing. I think
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if tuned in is a good word really, but
It's already
yeah,
changed in the way that it's
yes,
already
yeah,
changed in the way that this would change it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is absolutely possible. I think that most people who have had these, if they think about the time in their lives that they had them, they were going through something where maybe they were going through big change in their life or a big move or just something that brings down your defenses or even depression, something that brings down your defenses, and this comes on. And we were talking about going to the doctor and how the doctor says, oh, just give you medication. If you think about oh, thank you, Brian. That was very nice. He said, "You are not alone. Positive thoughts are going your way." That was very nice. Thank you. If you think about the scientific statistics that 1 in 5 people have had this experience, there's a good chance that the doctor you are speaking to has had this experience.
yeah,
So why are they? Is it because they're of a scientific mind and they don't want to because the scientist, the doctor on that particular documentary said that he feels as a scientist, if you say it's paranormal, that you've lost, that you've
yeah,
given up. And so perhaps that's why your doctor isn't going to sit down and say, I've had that same experience, and no, it's not medical. And maybe it's the scientific mind that won't let them accept it as being paranormal.
they don't want to lose their jobs, do they?
Yeah,
Because they,
and the thing is that if so many people have it, Why would it be socially unacceptable to talk about it? For thousands of years, we've all had it. What today do we experience that they experienced 3,000 years ago that we have in common with them? What today do we experience that's the same? Music, if we talk really, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, otherwise, our lifestyles, our religion, our complete way of thinking is different than 3,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, what else has carried over that we have in common? Well, this. So why can't we talk about it openly and speak to our doctors about it? 1 in 5 of them, at least, have had this experience, and I think that that's part of why people, like you said, they're going to lose their job. Yeah, that's why you don't talk about it to other people. I mean, we can talk about it in these paranormal communities. I can talk about it with my family, but would I go into a social group and start saying, "You're not going to believe what I experienced last night and what I heard in my ear," and no, they're going to go, "Okay," even though it's likely that they've experienced it too. But we're not going to talk about it. And I think that that is part of the problem. That is part of what keeps people weak, is that
Yeah.
we don't strengthen each other by saying, "Yeah, I had that too."
Yeah.
You're
Because at
not
the end,
like Brian said, you're not alone.
at the end of the day, these entities, in my opinion, this is me saying this, are just cowards because they pick on people when they are at the lowest. They pick on people who are isolated, maybe from their family and from their friends, and that is just that's just being a coward in my book. And if people in the if the wider community were more accepting, then when people are at a low ebb like this, they would have people there who would support them, not think that they're lunatics. Because I
Right.
think it's really, really horrible how we treat people with mental illness. And having a mental illness myself, I know that the medication I'm on now, that it's got me to the point that I don't know if I told you this, Tracy. I take a lot of medication, don't I? A huge amount,
Yes.
and most of it is for pain. But I do
Right.
take a lot of medication for my mental health problems. The other day, I forgot to take my tablets in the morning. Um, the girls were here, and I completely forgot to take them. When I went to take my afternoon tablets, I realised that I've not took my mornings, and I was feeling really, really crap. This medication has got me now that basically, if I don't take it, I can't function.
Right. Well, right.
I know it's getting slightly off kilter here, but maybe there were other ways of dealing with my problem other than just giving me medication.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, but no, I just think it's like kicking people when they're down, isn't it?
Right.
Just kicking people when they're down, and I don't like that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm not going to start talking about cowardly demons.
Yeah, no. Well, I want if there are any demons listening, it's me that said that.
I'm just, yeah, I didn't say it. Um, in Rhode Island in the 19th century, they had an outbreak of these Maras, and they started to exhume the dead, take out their
Yeah,
heart, and burn them to stop these entities from visiting them because they were afraid that it was because of the people who had died, that their spirits were visiting them. So, it's strange because at one point in history, lots of points throughout history, people did talk about it because entire communities were affected. We don't have that type of community in our society anymore. Everybody's busy, everybody's doing their own thing. You can't even sit down at dinner without everybody being on their phone. We don't have that type of community where we see the same people day in and day out, and we exchange chickens for beef or goats, and we rely on each other. If you're building a new hut, the community helps you. We don't have that experience anymore. So I think that that's another thing that leads to us not talking about it, because if we wouldn't know if there was a community outbreak of these experiences, because I literally have 3 neighbors right next to me. I have never met them. It's really strange. But throughout history, when it would come through a village or whatever, then they would think, oh, we need to dig up the dead people. Everybody was talking about it in Tanzania. Everybody was talking about it. You couldn't help but talk about it. There's those communities. They're 24/7 together, and there's a trust built up there where we don't have that here, or in most first world countries, I would assume, which is too bad. But I think that's a lot of why we don't hear it about it as much. It's why people can't talk about it.
Speak for yourself. We're from the UK. We've only just got electricity.
Rob, you said the other day that you had to put money in your TV and crank it to watch it.
That's what we used to have to do when we were kids. You used to have to put 50 pence in the back. Seriously, if there's anyone from the UK who's sort of around the age of 50-ish, tell it it's the truth. You used to have to you'd rent your TV from a TV rental place, and the way that you used to pay for it is you used to put 50p's in the back, and then the man used to come round and empty it, and that would go towards your paying for your telly. And when you'd pay for it, he'd come and take the thing off the back, and you could watch it normally.
I think that I saw a documentary about that, and the people worked in a rock quarry, and they had these cars that they would move with their feet.
Oh, bugger off. I was actually believing you then.
Okay, Mad Meerkat says, quite right, Rob. I don't know. Were you making fire with sticks?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I got you.
We had an outside toilet. We didn't have a toilet in the house when I was a kid.
Right. Where did you live again?
I'm from Manchester. North
Did
Manchester.
you have a pet whose name was Dino?
I don't even know.
Was there dirt? Was there dirt yet?
Was there what?
Dirt.
Dirt?
Yeah.
I mean dirt? Of course it was dirt.
Haven't you ever heard the expression older than dirt?
No, I haven't heard that one.
Oh.
We had a tin bath. We used to have a bath in front of the fire until my dad fitted a bathroom.
You're kidding me. Like a trough?
No, like a big metal bath, like a tin bath.
What? I don't understand. What's a tin bath?
Bath made out of tin.
Like a trough? Is it like a...
Yeah, sort of, but metal.
Well, yeah, troughs are metal, right?
We didn't have a bathroom inside, so we had an outside toilet, and we had for about 3 or 4 years we had to have a bath my mum used to boil hot water on the stove, and we would have a bath in the house. And then after about 3 or 4 years, he fitted a bathroom, and we had an indoor bathroom then, bath and a shower. And
Did you live in a little house on the prairie?
thought we were friends.
Diabolical Witness says, my grandfather was born in 1896. I'm sure he did the same thing.
Thanks, mate.
1896. Can't. Did you have chupacabras?
Yeah, all over the show.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was way off topic, but I appreciate the history lesson.
Right. I'm going to read you something else now that I found out today. There have also been lots of links. You've got to bear in mind, just give me the benefit of the doubt here, because you're all going to go, he's talking crap again. But I actually read this today. And everything you read on the internet is real.
Well, of course. And by the way, Diabolical Witness wants to say he's not kidding about 1896. And yeah.
I wasn't born in 1896.
Are you sure, Rob?
I was born in 1968.
So close.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the podcast. Also, who cares?
Go ahead.
Also, there have been lots of links between night terrors and sleep paralysis with alien abduction. Yeah? Listen to the rest of it. I knew you was going to start laughing.
Okay.
When you are suffering from night terrors, you can't move, can you?
Right.
People being forced to lie down, unable to move. Having experiments done on them. They bear lots of similar traits to night terrors. And the majority of people say that they are abducted at night. And lots of people say that ETs look very similar to what people think demons look like. Now, if you think about what I've just said there, I believe there's a little bit more to that than just laughing.
Oh. Did you just slap my hand with a ruler?
Not from. You have to be a long ruler.
Well, I get the connection, and I believe in I have a story that is my own experience with a UFO. If you'd like to look at it, so I believe in UFOs, and was quite afraid that I was going to be abducted. But I mean, I can see that. What?
What? Said we can only wish.
Oh, wow.
I just need to be excused, please, miss.
Anyway.
You just tell everybody about your alien abduction.
I actually don't have an alien abduction story yet. You'll be the first to know. But and I can see.
I'm sending them your way.
No, thank you. I don't need any more. I've had enough. I can see how people could think that. I mean, I can see that you're being held down and somebody's on top of you. I don't think that's out of the realm of what people could come up with as what happened to them, I guess. I mean, I've never been abducted by aliens, so I have nothing to compare it to. I know I wasn't. Are you there? Rob? Have we lost you? Jeremy, did we lose Rob? Was he abducted by an alien? That's so funny. That was the strangest timing. Well, maybe Rob will come back. Maybe he won't. And then we can tell us about his probing. All right, Jeremy, you want to talk to me about sleep paralysis and demons? Do you mind if I tell them your story? Okay, so Jeremy moved here about a year ago from where he used to live. And the first experience he ever had with a night terror was in my house, of course. Now, he had been practicing lucid dreaming, so it wasn't unknown. Hey, are you back?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Were you abducted? Can you tell us about it? Was it painful?
Yeah, it was. Don't want to talk about it. Still very raw. That came out wrong. Oh God! Oh, sorry, everyone. Is JD there?
Oh,
You listening?
He's listening. Yes.
JD, will you sort your wife out?
Oh, he's not here with me.
Oh,
yeah, they went somewhere else to listen. Anyway, I was talking about Jeremy's experience with his night terror.
Yeah.
Or whatever we want to call these. And like I said, he had been practicing lucid dreaming. So that was something that he was not afraid of, that aspect of, feeling like you're awake, dreaming. But at this particular night, he had an experience where he saw what he believed was my son Joshua walk in to his room, and he felt that it was dark. Is that correct, Jeremy? You felt that? Did you feel that that it was a dark presence? Can people hear you? Okay. Okay, so it walked up to Jeremy, and at that point, he felt that it was a dark presence. He saw it walk up to him, and eventually realized that it was not my son. Right, Jeremy?
Correct, yeah. So I had thought that Josh snuck into the room and was there to scare me. So I was like preparing myself. But once it got close to me, that's whenever I really got the spine chill and got. I would say past terrified. Like I was.
Can people hear you?
Yeah, they can hear me. You know how
Okay, good.
You know how you're not really able to when you're so terrified or so afraid, you're not even able to kind of emote that. You're not able to process the feelings of being afraid. You're just in complete shock almost.
Yes.
That's what I was. When I say I was like past terrified, that's kind of what I jumped to immediately.
Right.
I went from like, oh, he's gonna sneak up on me to, oh, what the heck, like.
Right.
And I think it's also important to note that my process for lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis is important to that because on nights that I would opt into lucid dreaming, the process required that I willingly go into sleep paralysis. So there was a process that I went to actually go into sleep paralysis every night. that I was going to lucid dream. So it's not just like I was. It's not like I was what's the word, like sorry. I'm having a complete brain fart. Like familiar, there's the word. It's not like I was just familiar with being awake but also asleep at the same time. Because of lucid dreaming, I was actually willingly going into sleep paralysis itself to transition into lucid dreaming. So that was my process. That was the process that worked for me. There's a bunch of other lucid dreaming processes that don't require going into sleep paralysis. Well, the scientific way is you go into it every night, so you don't act out your dreams. But the way to go into it and still keep your mind awake is the process that I use to get into a lucid dream. And so, like, the idea of being frozen and not being able to move wasn't scary to me until you see an entity on your couple dozen times going in there. And it wasn't even, that's the thing too, I was laying in the recliner in Maya's room, so it wasn't even like I was trying to lucid dream. I was just, I wasn't feeling that well that day, and I just wanted to get some rest from what I remember. And yeah, that happened.
Right. And then you had another experience where you, like many people do, see an entity and its face changes.
Yeah, that one was, I mean, the one where I thought Josh came into the room, that was kind of like, whoa, Josh, was that you? No, okay. And then I just kind of got past it. But the face changing one, that one stuck with me for a good week. And right. I would still say now that's something that I think about very briefly. Like, I don't want to run into that again tonight.
Right. So, and we made a deal with Jeremy that we were not going to have him go into details about his experience, because we both agree that we like to sleep regularly and without extra visitors. So we both had an arrangement that we were not going to go in depth into describing, but I did want to point out that he has had two very classic examples of these quote unquote night terror experiences, right, Jeremy?
Correct. And there's something too that I want to mention. So I won't go into detail of what I saw as far as like the entity or anything like that, but I will note that the world that I don't know if there's anything that you guys are going to talk about within like world alterations, but the way I like to explain it is whenever I go into sleep paralysis, it's like I'm in the upside down. It's my room, but the lighting's different. The vibe is different. It's almost like if anybody's seen the show Stranger Things, it's a mirrored world that exists in another dimension of sorts, and it mirrors exactly what's in our reality, but in a different shade, if you will. And that's always the world I go into whenever I'm going into sleep paralysis. And I've had a phenomenon happen recently that's really got me thinking. So I'll lay in bed and it takes me a good hour to get to sleep, like just normally. And if I'm, if I'm really anxious or whatever, then it'll take even longer. So I'll be laying in bed and I sleep with a sleep mask on. So, yeah, you guys can make fun of me in the comments if you want. There's no light or anything that gets in, through the windows, and because I have the sleep mask on. And I have this phenomenon that happens where about 30 minutes, maybe an hour into trying to fall asleep, I'll be completely awake. I won't be in sleep paralysis. I won't even feel, because there's a familiar feeling that I can feel the sleep paralysis come throughout my body. It feels like very numbing. I don't feel that. But what does happen is through my sleep mask, I see my room completely how it is, like with the bathroom, my computer, everything right exactly where it's supposed to be, exactly where I'm looking. But it looks a bit like a gothic oil painting, as if like you took a picture of my room and then like put a shade of opaque paper over it, you know? And the really weird thing is I can move my head around and see my room. But if I put my hand in front of my face, and mind you, I have a sleep mask on. If I put my hand in front of my face, I don't see my hand. But I can see my room in real time through my sleep mask. Almost like I have like X-ray vision. It's super weird. And this happens every 3 nights, recently. And it's a really weird phenomenon because it looks exactly like the room that I go into, or the realm that I go into whenever I'm in sleep paralysis, where it's my room. It's just a tad bit different. Like it's almost like an astral projection, type situation. So I just wanted to mention that.
Hello? I can hear you. Stacey.
No, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. I had said to you that was interesting. My thing was on mute for some reason. I don't know. That was interesting. During my last sleep paralysis experience, Jeremy got to be here for it and experienced something as well during my 24 hours. That's also in my story that you guys can listen to. And it's also a reason why he didn't want to go into describing what happened to him a lot, because it was, disturbing. Is that a good word, Jeremy? Okay. Okay, Rob.
yes.
Was there other stuff that you wanted to touch on?
So
what were the two things you were going to tell me that I didn't know already? Have you done that?
PTSD thing and the
Yes.
alien abduction.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't
So do you
expecting
think it could have something to do with aliens?
Well, it's the whole crossover thing, isn't it? To do with, you can't, if you had 100 people in a room and gave them all a pen and a piece of paper, or a pencil and a piece of paper, and asked them to draw a picture of what they perceive a demon to look like, or what they would perceive an alien to look like. So far as the alien concerned, they're probably all going to draw the same thing, because everybody's got this idea that they look like them little grey aliens.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask everybody to draw a demon, everybody's going to draw something different.
Right.
So no one actually knows, unless you've had an experience yourself, and then obviously you're going to be coming from a personal experience. But
right.
Everybody's going to draw it differently. So how do we know that the old hag isn't a demon?
Or isn't it like an alien?
Exactly. How do we know? How do we really 100% know? So when we're saying that sleep paralysis or night terrors are like alien abductions, and there are a lot of similarities there.
Uh-huh.
How do we know that it's not? When people see ghosts, they're really seeing people from another dimension. They're not necessarily dead people; they're from another dimension.
Well, that was something that one of the doctors on that documentary talked about.
Yeah.
That scientists now believe that there's, concurring dimensions, and that could be that we're seeing something. But on the other hand, why is it the same thing? Over and over. It's the same common experience. And And why is it always terrifying? And I want to read Diabolical Witnesses telling us about his experience. And he said, was asleep, but heard my youngest daughter walk up to me. I could hear breathing, could not move my eyes, but then realized that she was not home that day. Panic followed, but I could not move, and I think I passed out. Do you think, Brian, that panic doesn't even cover the extent of what's going, you know what I mean? Like, I can't, if I could magnify the word panic by 1,000 times, and there was a word for that, that's how it feels to me. That was my dog in the background, by the way. Sorry. She wants to talk about this. Maybe she had experience. And he says, I've been altered due to this. Yeah. Clearly, so have I. It's like I said, if you've never experienced this, I really can't
It's just
convey.
very personal.
Yeah, I really can't convey. Just like if I had never been on a roller coaster, let's say, you couldn't convey the experience of the adrenaline of the click, 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 going up to the top and being at the top and right before you go down. You couldn't convey that to somebody who's never had an experience like that. But if you have been on, if you like roller coasters, you now just heard, you just went, yeah, that's the part. That's the part. So this is kind of the same thing where I can't express it to you enough of how literally terrifying it is. And I also want to talk about what happened in the Hmong community when, well, I'll do this. In 1980, there was a pattern of unexplained deaths that was brought to the attention of the American Center for Disease Control. It had been starting about 1977, and there was 100 deaths that the American Center for Disease Control began looking into because it was only among this Hmong community. The Hmong community its history goes back before time. It's ancient. And they had what was being described as sudden, unexpected nocturnal death syndrome. The victims of this, and what they ended up calling, the CDC ended up calling it, was an epidemic. The victims were Hmong refugees who had fled to the United States after the Vietnam War. And then this started happening in their community. And like I said, at least 100 people died from it. The woman who was in charge of investigating this came to believe that there was no other explanation than, they call it the Dao Cho, by the way. That's what they call this demon. She said that there was no other explanation, that these were perfectly healthy people who were going to bed and dying. And she came to believe that it was the Dao Cho. Now, she said she couldn't say that she wouldn't say that there was a real demon, but to them it was very real. So it could have been that it was a mass hysteria thing, which really kind of invalidates the fact that she said she believed that it was the Dao Cho, when then you're going back and saying could have been totally psychological. Well, totally psychological doesn't kill you in the middle of the night.
No.
And I was watching one documentary and somebody said, because it's so horrifying, is it not possible that it could give people a heart attack? And they would die from a heart attack at night, and that would be what's on their death certificate. And yes, it's that horrifying. If you have were to have a heart problem, having one of these experiences at the wrong time, I can't even imagine what your heart rate goes up to during these experiences. So, how many people have died in their sleep, and it's just been written off as a heart attack, as opposed to having had this encounter with this entity? And they interviewed this one person, and he said that he felt like this entity was sucking his being out of him, and he was trying to scream, which is something that most people who have had this experience all have in common. We've tried to scream, but you can't get it out. But his wife woke up, and she could see that he was in distress and trying to scream, but was, not unable. And she woke him up, and he felt that if she hadn't woke him up, that he would have died, that he was in the process of dying, which is why he did this documentary, because he was afraid to go to sleep ever again. So would stay up and stay up and stay up, and had to have somebody with him to go to sleep. And that's what led him to go to these cultures around the world, to hear that he was not alone, that this was something that was actually common. I mean, 1 out of 5 people is fairly common. If I had a 1 out of 5 chance of winning the lottery, I'd buy a ticket, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that this particular documentary that we watched, and what was the name of it? What was the name of it, Rob? In case other people want to watch it.
The Entity.
It was called The Entity. You sound funny, Rob.
Do I?
Yeah.
In what respect?
Like you're in a tin can.
Are you still taking?
No, seriously.
What about now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
You act like I'm a schoolyard bully with you. Diabolical Witness says, I have at least 3 very life-changing events on this. One affecting another person, my eldest daughter specifically. We call it the upgrade. Okay. Is that a good thing? I myself have never felt upgraded by this. What else do you want to talk about, Rob, that has to do with the history of this? I have so many notes.
Yeah. Oh, let me put my light back on.
There's a doctor whose name is Alan Shane, and he works at the University of Waterloo, and he said that he's been conducting in-depth investigation on sleep paralysis for 15 years. He's had 56,000 people fill out a form online, and he still has come to the conclusion that it's simply brain chemicals. No, I wish that he had been asked during this interview. I wish he had been asked, then how is it that millions of people since the beginning of time, because it's actually written so far back that it was the original hag, the original demon named in this was Lilith. Who is said to have been Adam's first wife. So that's, if you're religious at all, you would believe that is like the beginning of human time-ish. And that, so since humans have existed, we've been having these experiences. And I wish somebody would have asked him, how do you explain it? It's the same experience. Hey, Brian, have you ever had one where you felt like somebody was on your chest? I'd be interested to know if you had that experience. And do you ever see what the entity that comes up to you? I never see it. I just feel its presence. Oh, I'm glad you got here, Jay, by the way. Um, yeah, he's had it on his chest and he never sees it. See, some of us never see it, which for me, I'm grateful for. But other people, like Jeremy, have seen it, and people say that they can smell it, even that they can feel its breath on them. I just feel the solid mask. What, Rob?
Sometimes people have said that they hear some strange kind of music as well. Before it happens.
Really?
Yeah.
I hear footprints. Sorry. I hear, yes, duh. Thank you. I hear footsteps, and I've said this before. I hear, it's as though, it's funny because, we were talking about that I like hospitals, but it is as though I'm in a hospital and somebody's walking down. I can feel this presence walking down the hall, and I can hear its footsteps reverberating off the walls. Or if you were in an empty gym and somebody's kind of like bouncing a ball, you know how that sound? That's how I hear it coming. And in my mind, to myself, I think, oh shit, it's coming. And I still can't stop it. I'm completely aware it's coming. Is that you, Rob?
You keep saying that. What?
Are you messing with me?
I'm not doing anything, I swear.
You did not just hit your microphone several times in a row.
Well, no, because it'll turn my phone off. I'm using my phone.
Was that you, Jeremy? Did you hear it? Rob. You don't know that Jeremy can see what you're doing back there, Rob.
Can you hear me now? Or have I gone funny again?
No, I said I heard the footsteps, and you just went boom, 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 boom on your microwave. A microwave?
Microwave.
I give up.
Hang on.
Microphone.
Listen to that noise.
You hear voice? Yeah, yes, Rob, that's that.
That's me on my table, not on my microphone. I didn't realise you'd be able to hear it.
I thought you were trying to scare me.
I would never try and scare you.
You hear voices, Jeremy? Okay, guys, Jeremy's talking to me, and he wants me to repeat something to you. Yeah. Oh, he says that he hears voices when he is in sleep paralysis, but he's figured out that it's his fan. And when his jaw relaxes, it does that noise. Oh, he says that he does hear faint music as though it's in a different room. Does anybody else hear? Anybody in the chat room? Do you hear it coming? Brian, do you hear it coming? Let me know. Or do you have any clue that it's coming? Because I have a warning. I have warning that it's coming, which is nice of it, I think, Thanks for that. I can start my terror just a few seconds earlier. They've also, when black and white movies were out, back you probably had those too, Rob.
Yes.
They used to make hundreds of gothic horror movies about sleep paralysis, where the person would be wide awake and have something this entity, come into the room and crawl on top of them. It's so strange that through different periods of history, people are talking about it. Diabolical Witness Brian says no, he has no clue. It just shows up. What, Jeremy? Victor, did you become a Patreon member? Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That was very kind of you. Rob, are you a Patreon member?
No, I'm not. You know why I'm not? I want to be.
Yes, I know.
Anyway. I was a Patreon member, but we are going to sort it out somehow so I can become a Patreon member again.
Yeah. Rob had a bad experience with PayPal.
Yes, I did.
Anyway, do you want to cover anything else, Rob, about the history of this? I want to say that in Rome, there is reports of this thousands of years back about what they called the succubus. These are known to be succubus and incubus in several cultures, which is more of a sexual entity, but not in any sort of a good way, in a violent and not good way. Right, Rob? And in the Salem witch trials, you could be found guilty of being a witch if there was night maras happening in that village.
Yeah.
And somebody said that it was you that was doing it.
Do you think there could be any link to sort of vampires as well?
Oh yeah. Actually, I read that it was the beginning of the belief of vampires as well, because people say that they feel like it's sucking something out of you. Lots of people said that they felt it sucking energy or force out of them, and that was the beginning that scholars believe was the beginning of the belief in vampire. Anything paranormal was its origin to humans try and we try and solve things and have an explanation for something, and so these were used as the explanations. Ghosts, or some cultures believe that it's their dead relatives, and other cultures believe that it's just a straight up demon. There's lots and lots of beliefs of what this is, but it's always horrifying. Nobody ever says it was the most relaxing experience I've ever had. Really, have you ever heard anybody say anything like that?
I've not ever heard anyone say anything like that. But after what I've said tonight, I might be able to give you some more answers tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Do get back with us and see how your night goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have any questions about the history of demons and sleep paralysis? Or any comments that you would like to make about it? Anything else you would like to ask? And what is your opinion? Do you believe, especially like Brian, you've experienced this, do you believe it's something like an entity? Brian is a ghost hunter and believes in the paranormal. So that'd be interesting to see if what he feels that it is. I'll wait for him. Go ahead.
Can I recommend that film that I watched today? The new film.
Do.
It's called The Myra. or whatever you say it,
Mara.
Mirror, and it's really, really, really good, and it's really scary, and I would recommend it. And if you do watch it, and you can still remember the podcast, you will see that a lot of what we've talked about, they must have done a lot of research in this film, because a lot of what we've talked about tonight is in this film, and it is really, really scary. And I would recommend it.
So it goes through a lot of the history.
Yeah, they basically, there's this psychologist, and she has to help these families, and she and this other guy go through all the history going back, right through, like we have done today, from the beginning of people on Earth, Lilith, to all the recorded incidents that have happened, up to the present day. And it's just I watched it on Showbox. So if you've got Showbox, I mean, I've sent you a link, so you could download that link and watch it on Android.
Oh, I don't have an Android.
Oh, we can't then.
Well, maybe I can find it on something else. Diabolical Witness, Brian says, really have not been able to figure out what it is. Still terrorized with poltergeists on occasion. And Brian, do you think that has anything to do with your, well, I don't know what you would call it. It's your experiences with ghost hunting and speaking to ghosts, spirits, however you want to refer to it. Do you think that, or poltergeist, do you think that it has to do with the fact that you do open the door to that sort of experience? Yes, it does. Yeah. That's what scares me about it.
You've got to be careful.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that we did this week. And I'm sorry that I cried. It's not very scary of me to cry.
Well, it's not. It's about you being emotional. It's not about you. You know, you had a difficult experience, and you know, it's not like you're among friends, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, and you and Jeremy both were involved in that whole experience I had, so that's interesting and comforting. That you guys know firsthand what it was like for me. So, like I said, if you guys have not heard that story, Maya can put the link up. I have two. I have one story about shadow figures, but I do have the story up about why we stopped doing paranormal podcasts for a while, which is a decision we all came to because of what had happened with me. I don't think there was any debate about. I don't think there was any debate. I think everybody at the same time was all on board with, like, let's not do that for a while, which was really kind and supportive. So if anybody has any questions, Diabolical Witness says, bless you, Tracy. Thank you. If nobody has any questions, then I will get into this part. In October, we're going to be doing a video every day of the month. And personally, in my head, it's already Halloween. I love Halloween. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I am very excited about this. And we're going to have several people who are going to be contributing to this special month. So we're going to have my oldest daughter is going to be doing it won't be a podcast, but it'll be like a podcast. Her and I are going to be talking like we are right now, but it's going to be recorded. And we're going to talk about lesser known serial killers. Rob and Jeremy are going to be doing a podcast about near-death experiences. I'm going to be interviewing Diabolical Witness, and we're working very hard to build up the content to have a video every day. So I am really excited about that. Really excited about it. Mad Meerkat says, "You're only human. It would be strange if you didn't show your emotional side." Thank you. I appreciate that. I do, you guys. Like I said, we have said 100 times, Rob and I both have groups on Facebook. And if Maya could put the links up to that, that would be awesome. And if you are listening to this podcast after it goes up and you are not already subscribed, please do. And please give this a thumbs up because it really helps my videos to be promoted through YouTube. And being promoted helps me to have a larger audience. And that is always the goal, to be able to share this with as many people who will enjoy it as possible. And if you'd like to be notified when I go live on a podcast or when I put content up, please go ahead and click that bell. And as a reminder, my channel is the only channel that you're going to find exclusively written creepypasta and suspenseful stories that are original. The other channels have to get their stories from about 4 different websites where people upload their written stories and you're allowed to narrate them. So you're going to hear a lot of the same stories over and over again. And I don't put my stories, my written stories, on any of those websites so that no other YouTuber can get my story and narrate it. So you're not going to hear it anywhere else. And all my stories are written by me. In some dark, creepy corner of my mind, I have a lot of weird stuff. So if you know people who are tired of hearing the same creepypasta or suspenseful stories over and over again, go ahead and send them my way, because I have a lot of content that's my stories. We also do a lot of strange murders and really bizarre circumstances, and a lot of the missing people in the national parks or strange disappearances in general. And these are things that I personally find fascinating. So if you enjoy that content and you would like to support this channel and you would like to become a member of Patreon, please consider that. And thank you to Victor, who did that. And one of the perks is, if you do that, you can call in during a podcast and talk to us about our topic, or tell us if you've had a strange paranormal story, a scary paranormal story, and we can discuss it, and that would be a lot of fun. Is there anything else, you guys, that I have left out?
I think you've covered everything.
All right. I also have a children's channel, and it's called Nightlight Storytime. If you have any children, it's classical Aesop's fables, Mother Goose stories that I narrate. And it's a very different experience than being on this channel. So no worries that children are going to be scared. All right, you guys, if that is it, we will be back next week, next Friday, with Jory. And Jory and I are going to talk about a particularly creepy place in Arizona where we lived for a long time that is said to be very, very haunted and well known among the community and the police department as being a place where animal sacrifices were committed. And is committed the right word? Animal sacrifices were performed. And it's called the Casa Grande Domes. I have a video on my channel about it, but it's a fictional story. Jory worked on a episode of Ghost Adventures when they did a story about the Casa Grande domes. So you guys, it's going to be a good one too. And if that's all, then I will say good night and thank you so much for supporting us. Diabolical Witnesses says Salem, Oregon. Wait, what's the question? Before I go, what did he say about I can update all of you on what's going on in Salem? Oh, yeah, Jay has the fortunate experience of living on the East Coast, like a hop, skip, and a jump from everything that we would love to go see. The Conjuring House, the The Haunting in Connecticut, and Lizzie Borden House, and all that stuff. Salem, Massachusetts. He has access to all of that, which makes me so super jealous. So, go ahead, Jay. You keep us updated on that, especially coming into Halloween. I love it. All right, you guys. Good night, Rob.
Good night.
Thank you to Rob. Thank you to producer Jeremy, and thank you for moderator Maya, who I forget to thank, and she works very hard, and I don't want to forget to thank her. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.